Welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice and making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 969-KTRS, 888-550-KTRS, or star KTRS from your cell phone.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement. You're live and local, St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. I'm Jeff Lapidus, president of JBL Financial Services. Our office is located in beautiful, sunny, quickly warming downtown Clayton, Missouri. I am a 39-year veteran of the financial services area, a fee-based financial planner and investment manager. And I'm joined this week and every single week by my very favorite, oldest prodigal daughter, Aaron Lapidus.
I run the health insurance side of our practice.
Yes, you do.
And we help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a written step-by-step strategy, a real game plan that has several goals in mind.
First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate. Second is to deliver a reliable stream of income, one that they can count on, so they can do all the things they'd like to do during retirement.
And third is cost-effectively addressing their health care needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to supplement their medical coverage.
And then when they're done enjoying their assets during their lifetime, we show them how to pass them on to the people they love, whether it's their spouses or children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, whoever it might be, with Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their financial planners and wealth managers, we watch their money every single day to make sure they're staying on track. And that's why they call us the retirement coaches. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morn.
It's another wonderful day in the neighborhood.
As always.
You know they came out with a Mr. Rogers movie?
Was it filmed in Pittsburgh?
I don't know. I have not seen it. I mean, I don't even know anything about it, but I think it's called, I don't even know what it's called, but I saw that there was a new Mr. Rogers movie. It reminded me of my Mr. Rogers event.
When you met dear Mr. Rogers?
Yes, I did. Well, you know, my cousin, as you know, my first cousin, who's a few months younger than I am, used to produce Mr. Rogers' program for about 8 years. And he got married, and I did happen to meet him at the wedding rehearsal.
And isn't this when Grandma introduced you and you didn't know what to say?
Yes, it was one of the very few times that I was speechless during my entire lifetime.
Because Grandma said, Mr. Rogers, this is my son. You taught him how to talk.
Yeah, that's right. And he said, nice to meet you, Jeffrey, in his Mr. Rogers voice. And, of course, I asked her if a plane wanted to dive out of that place and run away as fast as I could, but instead I was frozen solid. And he extended his hand, and I shook his hand, and I couldn't say a word, and I smiled back at him. And didn't talk to your grandma for about a week, but, you know, she deserved that.
That seems fair. I mean, embarrassment in front of a celebrity.
Yes, exactly, and it was certainly an interesting experience, but can't get rid of that voice. Nice
Never.
to meet you, Jeffrey. Well, now that we're done reminiscing, we just want to let you folks know our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. 969-KTRS, star KTRS from your cell phones, or 1-888-550-KTRS. Whether you have questions about your 401ks, your IRAs, market's starting to warm up again.
Toasty.
Life is good. Looking at those 401k statements going, oh, wasn't as good as the end of
January 26th.
Excuse me, but we're making our way back.
Slowly but surely.
Life is good.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, give us a call if you have any questions. And naturally, if you have questions about health care, health insurance coach is always here in the house. So give us a call. 969-KTRS, star KTRS from your cell phones, or 1-888-550-KTRS. And as a reminder, all the folks that are clients of ours, those are folks that like to visit with us for coaching sessions, are folks that are just like you. Those between the ages of 55 and 75, they'd like to retire or they're already retired. And again, as Aaron mentioned, we do create a game plan, a real strategy, so they can hopefully have the income that they need. We can replace that for them, make those health care transition choices, deal with issues like Social Security and taxes. Go out and have fun.
Have some fun.
That's really what it is. And as we always say, it really is a privilege for us to be invited on the journey.
That's right.
We love to do that, and for us, it's a lot of fun. So, the show, if you've listened to it before, we're not going to scare you.
Nothing to scare you about.
Exactly. We don't want to develop fear. What we actually want to do is something that's very different. We want you to be excited.
Enable you to do all the things.
Exactly. Because truthfully, we're excited when folks come to visit with us. How do we put these pieces together? How do we make this into just like the best recipe that you can possibly imagine? And make sure that nothing's blown over, nothing's undercooked, right?
That is correct.
We have fun, and we really do enjoy doing this with folks. And that's what's important, because the process is always all about you. Talking about all about you, we know that folks do like to keep in touch with us during the week. There's a couple of ways to do that, right?
There are. You can go to our website, jblfinancial.com. You can click on the top right-hand corner, contact us, send us an email, ask us a question, give us a shout-out. We're happy to respond. Also, a pop-up box will appear in the lower left-hand side of the screen, and you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, The Coach's Corner.
And Erin and her staff do keep the last 6 to 8 months of those archived for your viewing, downloading, printing convenience. We did unveil the newsletter last week. We do always have 4 different topics that are available, and all of them are, as I like to say, thought-provoking.
That's right.
A cornucopia of topics.
Yes, and this month's July newsletter kicks off with a fun financial quiz, financial facts that might surprise you. We did a couple last week, so let's look at one more this week. How about the first organized stock market in New York was founded on Wall Street under what kind of tree? Maple, linden, buttonwood, or elm?
This is important.
It's critical. It's the buttonwood.
There you go.
On May 17th, 1792.
Cool.
24 New York City stockbrokers and merchants met under a buttonwood tree outside of what is now known as 68 Wall Street.
Capitalism works.
Their 2-sentence broker's agreement is known as the Buttonwood Agreement.
Neat. Interesting fact.
What
are the titles of the other 3 articles?
Going public. An IPO's market debut may not live up to the hype. So this is discussing, when you hear about large IPOs, if it's a good idea to invest initially or not. A lot of times we think back to things like Snapchat was a recent IPO, back when Facebook was one of the largest IPOs. This is a conversation about, does it make sense to invest in the initial public offering or after?
There you go.
Protect your heirs by naming a trust as IRA beneficiary.
Good idea.
So this is some of the
If you do have a trust, right.
Exactly.
And the fact is that there's some new financial protections that can be incorporated in the trust, and it does make sense to do so. So
yes.
Visiting with your attorney is always a good idea. Getting those documents updated is really a smart idea. And at the same time, the legal, we've always felt, Aaron, is that the legal documents that you have, the titling, etc., really create the foundation for your financial plan to sit on.
That's right.
And if you don't have a sound foundation, guess what? Things can happen.
That's right, and we've all heard unfortunate stories about when someone passes away suddenly, either, things having to go through probate, which is expensive and time-consuming, and also really generally not most likely what the person wanted to happen.
Right.
It's just what ended up happening, because sometimes there is planning involved in what happens. Where's your money going to go? And titling has a big component of that.
Yes, it does. And in that vein, not everyone needs to have a trust.
Right. Not everyone needs a trust to make the money flow the way they want it to.
Asset protection is one reason that folks do trusts. Another reason is that maybe they have a situation where they may have a special needs, whether it's a child, a grandchild, etc., where they feel like it makes sense to have someone responsible watching over those assets after they've passed away. because the people that they're leaving to may not be either in a good financial position or spendthrifts.
Right. Or the thing that I've always thought made a lot of sense was it's most important for you to have a trust if you don't trust.
Right.
So it might not be that you have a special needs child. It could be that you have a child that has difficulty with their finances, or...
Frankly, we've even had some clients where, their children have had issues, whether it's with drugs or other things, and that they just don't feel comfortable in leaving them large sums of money.
Right. So what this does is it allows you to control the flow of your assets after you've passed on, even to the people that you've designated as the heirs.
That's what your grandpa would say, dead hand control.
That's right. The last two articles are, I received a large refund on my tax return this year. Nice. Should I adjust?
I would love to see. I haven't seen one of those in a long time. That'd be nice.
Should I adjust my withholding? Well, I think we mentioned this last time. Of course, you basically gave an interest-free loan to the government by over-withholding on your taxes.
And we've certainly often heard from folks, and this is even those that we think are pretty good savers, is that they do it on purpose so they can have this money coming in at the end, which, and frankly, I guess if it's if you want to think of it as an interest-free savings account, and you really have a purpose of getting that money back, as an example, either dealing with, let's say, real estate tax that you owe, or, hey, we take a trip, for in the summer, and so we need to make sure we're getting our money back April, May, etc. I could see doing that, but generally it's not a smart idea.
Also, I mean, maybe
it doesn't make you more patriotic, frankly, to do that.
Right, and maybe that's a good idea for people who know themselves.
Right.
I'm not going to be able to save this money unless it's physically out of my hands.
Right.
That would be the reason why you would overwithhold. And then the final article is, what is the difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit?
Good one, right? Yeah, because tax deductions we know are applied against adjusted gross income, whereas tax credits are actually direct credits and reduces your actual income tax liability.
So two different components, important to know both.
Yes, understand them, and the new tax law certainly is something that does that. Again, we call it the Coach's Corner, easy to access. Just go to our website, jblfinancial.com.
Click on our little pop-up box.
Please do, and give us your name, address, as well as your email address and age, and we're more than happy to send that to you every month, as we are with several thousand folks that we're doing today.
That's right, and you can keep in contact with us every single day by logging on and following us on Twitter or friending us on Facebook, JBL Financial. We have a lot of great information that's not always finance-related. Some of it is fun, community-related, giving you some ideas of what to do with all your newfound free time. Also, exciting continued announcement that we'll be releasing our podcast at the end of August. So it'll be basically a compilation of some of the best topics that we've discussed over the last few years, all compiled into one format for you to not only listen to at your leisure, but send out to your friends and family if you want them to hear some topics.
Spread the good word.
Exactly. So we'll have more on
and it's
that.
funny, Aaron, as you were talking about Facebook and the fact that we're always adding friends every week. Our listeners there. I was thinking about Mr. Rogers because the whole thing about won't you be my neighbor? Well,
won't you be our friend?
Exactly. Won't you be our friend? So now we have the technological age. Friend us.
Neighbor us.
Neighbor us. We love to do that.
On Facebook.
Am I allowed to tell my Aaron story?
I cannot wait. Please.
Okay. It was so funny.
It was so funny.
Well, what happens is, when you're the firstborn, you get to be the one that, I don't know.
The guinea pig?
I was going to say that we had a little more fun with you than we did with your sister, okay, because you were kind of learning. But when you were young, we would turn on Mr. Rogers, and at the very beginning of the show, they would have this crayon map. It would be a street.
Okay.
And I know you remember this too. And what would happen is every time it would come on, we'd be sitting there, and I'd point to the second house from the left in the corner. I'd say, "There's Grandma's house. Wave, Aaron." You always wave at Grandma. Because of course, Mr. Rogers from Pittsburgh, and that's where
Grandma's
I was born.
From Pittsburgh.
And Grandpa lived in Pittsburgh. You were a fun child.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I thought you were going to go with one of my other very gullible moments, but I'm sure there's just plenty of time.
Honey, we have years on the radio. We'll try to get these out.
Get them all in eventually.
We get out some of these pearls as we're going, but it is a lot of fun. So I did want to. We didn't have a caller last week, and I do apologize because I didn't write down the gentleman's name. But we had gone over income tax rates. And two things I think should be stood out and are real clear. Number one is for virtually everybody that I know that's listening, that's catching this, you save money on your income taxes, period.
Yes.
I mean, what happened is the actual rate tables themselves, the brackets were lowered by an average of 2 to 3%. So you're automatically saving money.
And then they were widened, so that means the last dollar you were paying on potentially could fall into a lower bracket than it did in the past.
Yeah, better. And so we figured out is that if you have an adjusted gross income of $89,000,
you're paying about $8,900.
You're falling in the 10% bracket. So tax planning is important, but frankly, it's become a lot more simplified. Our caller last week did, though, ask a question about capital gains. And this is something that they're going to be looking at. Again, capital gains taxes, they sit on top of your income taxes. And really, there's two types. Number one is what we call short-term capital gains. These are gains that are basically on sales of securities that happen that were held
within 12 months.
Less than 1 year. And then we have long-term capital gains.
Anything held over a year that you said.
Right. So short-term capital gains are taxed just like any other income. They're ordinary income. You get 100% of it. It sits right on top of your income. It's just like wages, or any other dividends or interest you get. You don't withhold FICA from them, obviously. But when it comes to long-term capital gains, it's a little bit different.
Right, you get a little bit of preferential treatment here as long as you hold the security for at least 1 year. Or this also counts for rental properties and things like that as long as it's been held over a year.
Right, anything that has a actual capital gain. So on the first $38,600 of income for a single person, so that means for married people filing jointly, on the first $76,000 or $77,000, you pay zero on long-term capital gains. No tax.
Not bad.
Very cool. So again, whatever that gain was, you sitting it on top of your current income. So if you were less, etc., you're zero. Here's the bad part. Not bad at all. Between $38,000 and $425,000
for a single person.
For a single person. So again, I think
between $72,000 and almost $850,000.
Right. You're only paying 15% on a long-term capital gain. So use an example. Let's say that, like we had with this client last week.
Sure.
Client of ours, they sold the family farm.
Right.
It was a very large farm. They happened to be getting a very large inheritance of about $300,000.
Right.
So no matter how much they'd earned, and she was retired, but she'd had a teacher's pension. Mm-hmm. She has some Social Security. She has money that we've been sending her for RMDs, etc. We know we're going to have to throw that on top. So in the worst case scenario,
she's going to pay 15%
of the gain.
Now, is this progressive, like the tax system, where on the first $38,000 she pays nothing, and then when you exceed the $38,000, then she starts to pay 15%? Is it progressive or no? No, once you jump into.
Well, honey, it would be progressive because again, this is sitting on the top of your income.
Right.
So if you only had, let's say, $30,000 of income and you had a $50,000 long-term capital gain, so the first theoretically $18,000 would be covered at 10% level, at the zero level, and then the balance of it would go to the 15%.
Okay, so that's important to keep in mind too, because a lot of people forget that when you're dealing with just strictly income tax, it's progressive, meaning that you have to move through the brackets to get to the most expensive bracket, and this works similarly. So
I hope that answers our caller's question. I mean, what happens is you have to be over $425,000 as a single person to actually get into the 20% bracket on capital gains. So
and that's the highest bracket, so the most you're going to pay is 20%.
0, 15, and 20, and frankly, we're looking at messing with that also, making that lower, because what they
should be incentivized to support industry.
Well, not just
and
that,
investment.
but also to make investment changes.
Right.
If you know that the tax is going to be very low, what you'll do is you'll rebalance your portfolio, especially for what we're talking about as non-qualified assets, because anything in an IRA or 401k or 403b or a Roth IRA, when you make buy and sells, nothing's taxed until, as we like to say, the money comes out of if it's an apartment, think of it as an apartment building, until someone walks out of the apartment, there's no taxation.
Got it.
So gains and losses, there are no long-term, short-term capital gains and losses inside these plans. It's only when you begin to bring the money out. So that's kind of an important thing to, really consider. So from a tax planning point of view, it's always good to be able to time these things. And going back to, let's take another situation. And we just saw this the other day. We had talked about this, about taxes. And this is kind of a common one, kind of a simple one. Most of the folks that we know we deal with do support charitable organizations in some way.
Right.
Whether it's dues to the church, or they're making contributions to the United Way, or they're doing et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And generally what happens is with most of us, we usually use cash.
Right.
Which is actually the worst thing to do. Because what happens is cash is then you can actually contribute up to 50% of your adjusted gross income, but you're losing the cash.
Right.
With many folks, and this is one that we saw last week as an example, we were working with a client who had been with 2 or 3 other brokerage firms before they came to work with us. And what happened was they had mutual funds as well as some stock that
had been passed through all of these broker dealers.
Right. And unfortunately what happened was the cost basis of them wasn't captured.
Because custodians weren't even required to maintain the cost basis of things until several years ago. So if you held something for over 15 years, it's very possible if you moved it from, say, Edward Jones to Stiefel or something like that, that it was lost during that transition because no one was required to report it.
The truth is, the minute a lot of folks, also, as you know, they buy their stuff directly from, especially mutual funds, from the fund company,
and so they're never required to pass that. They weren't.
Once it moves to another custodian, as a brokerage firm or an investment advisory firm, now they're required to, but they weren't before.
Right.
So we have folks that have, I hate to use the word, but it's dead weight.
Right, because
inside their
you
portfolios.
Need to be able to show the IRS what the capital gain was. If they ask. So you need to be able to have documentation that we bought it at this amount. But the other thing that commonly happens is people with these funds or even individual securities have set their accounts so the dividends are reinvested.
Which makes sense, right?
Of course. Every single time you reinvest a dividend, they're purchasing another share of whatever security you had. So you have a whole cost basis that's been lost there as well.
Exactly. So it makes it very difficult. So, questions are, we typically get in that situation.
What do we do?
What do we do? Well, there's a couple of ways. There's a couple of things you can do. One thing is, in terms of, if you want to use it, call it portfolio rebalancing. Take the dividend.
Make it go to cash.
Quit reinvesting it. You're paying taxes on it anyways, and then you can buy something else.
Right, so it's like not putting any more fuel on the fire, essentially.
Right. Number 2 is that why not consider beginning to gift the shares of those mutual funds or individual stocks, whatever it would be, to the charity instead of cash? Because it works
in everyone's advantage. You get to take the deduction for the fair market value when you make the donation.
Right.
So the cost basis no longer matters. When the charity or the church or whatever qualified 501c3 receives the donation, they don't pay taxes on the donation, so they get to liquidate it to cash for the fair market value, no tax implications for them. So what we've been telling clients is you don't have to donate more or less than you have in the past. If you donate $10,000 a year, you have $10,000 in a potential security that we don't know the cost basis of. Just donate $10,000 of that.
Yeah, let's talk about that because let's use some round numbers for fun here. Okay, let's assume that you were making let's say among all of your donations you're making, let's say they total $5,000 to $10,000, and let's assume that you knew, or you hoped, is that the cost basis, the amount you had put in plus maybe accumulated dividends, let's say it ran to be half of that. Let's say so basically, let's say you put in $5,000, it's worth $75,000. I mean, you think the cost base is $7,500, but the fair market value is $10,000.
Okay.
You actually save taxes double, which is really
double
cool.
Taxes.
Well, think about it. What happens is that when you make that charitable donation,
you get the deduction.
Right. But at the same time, because you didn't sell it first,
you don't have to pay the capital gain.
Woohoo!
And
there you go.
And also, you avoid any questioning of the IRS. And also,
you have to. Well, the truth is, you create the table. What's the probability you're going to get audited? Is who knows. But you're the one that actually has to supply the data. Now, we know that funds that you've purchased generally through investment advisory firms or brokerage firms, now they're required, when you sell stuff, they're required to send it. It's when you don't have it is when you go, okay, this is what we think it is.
Right.
And, especially like with bond funds, especially tax-free bond funds, they never change. So that's not really a big deal. But when you get to stock mutual funds especially, it's...
Or the other alternative, aside from just donating these things to charity, we have many clients, and there are sure many people that are determining how they would like to structure the inheritance, how they would like to dole the money out after they've passed on. And so maybe they don't want to gift out any of these stocks or these securities to charity. But what you can do is designate them to be passed on to children or grandchildren, and they'll get the step up in basis at the date of your death.
Right.
So then they'll know what the cost basis is because they'll have that information, and so then you no longer have that issue.
And that's what we've recommended to folks that were stuck.
Right.
The other side of the fence is that if you do it during life, bad news.
Right, because they still need the cost basis of that because it's a gift. It's not. That's
right. They have to. If they do go to sell it later, right? They have to say what the cost basis is. So, it's easier to pass on when you pass on.
Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you, Vic. Or alternatively, get rid of it while you're alive. Better than save your cash. And
absolutely.
If you think about it that way, if you instead of giving away $5,000 in cash, as an example, you give away security that you don't know the cost basis for. You get the deduction. You save whatever tax issues you have.
And it was still the same amount of money.
And now you have the other $5,000 that you can now begin to use to rebalance your portfolio and actually establish a basis in something that's cool.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Good thinking. So hopefully. So we want to thank our caller because that gave us an opportunity.
Question.
Right, great question. He gave us a chance to kind of run with that one a little bit, right? Which we love to do. So wonderful. And again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. 969-KTRS, star KTRS from your cell phones, or 1-888-550-KTRS. Cool. So we talked about the newsletter, talked about how you can contact us, which is always good.
Yes.
Why don't we go to... I don't know. What do you think, babe? You want to be? Should we do I have to be vanilla?
I think we should. We started discussing this at the very end of the show last week, and we've also touched on it just now in our last conversation about what type of wealth transfer are you? Right. Are you vanilla, like most people generally are, or
why don't you describe what vanilla is?
So vanilla, that would be, if you happen to be married, the assets pass between you and your spouse.
Tax-free.
Tax-free. Then, when the last spouse passes away, goes 100% to the children, however many they are divided up amongst them. Then, on to the grandchildren. So basically, the kids deal with the grandchildren for you. But you don't have to be that way.
No, you don't really have to be that way.
You get to control your money.
Exactly. And a lot of times you can do these through your legal documents, but in many cases you don't have to use legal documents.
Right, so this is a case where you might... Not being vanilla doesn't even necessarily require advanced legal documents like wills or trusts.
Right.
You can use beneficiary designations and TODs on your accounts to accomplish this.
So let's talk about Joe and Sally, who over the last 10 years have aged on our show.
Now they're in their 70s?
Exactly. They're taking their required minimum duties that they want, but they're now really interested, as many of our clients do when they get to that age, they're talking about wealth transfer.
What do we do with all this money that we have?
Yeah, how can we maximize our wealth? That is what we've created to pass it on to the people we love without Uncle Sam taking a big bite. And frankly, maybe more importantly, is helping them maybe create more solid financial futures as well. Having a little bit of, I don't want to say dead hand control, but maybe having a gentle hand on somebody's back so that you can help them along the way. So let's talk about them, right? So
Joe and Sally have 2 children. And their 2 children have 4 grandchildren.
There you go.
They have about they have $1.2 million in assets
in their IRAs,
and about $620,000 of assets outside of their IRAs.
So they've done a nice job in accumulating. At this point, they don't have any plans to consume a large portion of that wealth. They're taking their required minimum distributions, which is helping them cover their expenses. So they're cool. Their children, they've told us, are both well off. They're well educated. Their marriages are solid, which is really an important thing to do as well. And their grandchildren are young.
All toddlers. Oldest are just teenagers now.
Yeah. So they're etc. And of course, Grandma and Grandpa, we're hoping don't go anywhere too soon, right?
Of course not.
Exactly.
What would we do without Joe and Sally?
So there's really 2 issues that have to be dealt with. Number one is there's the estate tax. And we know that you can gift $11 million of your estate out without there being taxation. So
they're fine.
The estate tax they're good with. But they're not good with what we call income with respect to decedents. And this is an area that we talk with clients about, but we're pretty confident that no other financial advisors, whether it's the attorney or accountants, actually talk about this.
Right, and it's interesting, in the last several years, the IRS has made a few rulings on this.
Especially in regard to beneficiary IRAs, which really leads into the whole trust planning as
exactly.
a secondary
So income with respect to decedents, once you've done your wealth transfers between spouses, which is always income tax free in life and in death. Once it goes to the next generation, what happens? For IRA assets, the IRS has determined that even though the children have inherited those IRAs, whoever inherits the IRA, it's theirs to use. It's not truly their asset, because really what happens is it's your undistributed retirement asset that you're passing along, and really the key there is untaxed. So the government still wants their money, so beneficiary IRAs are required to start distributing the money within the year that they're received. So either the inheritant can take all the money at one time over 5 years, or over the course of their life, having to pay taxes as the distributions come out.
So those are really, again, the three basic options for IRAs. And this is whether they're qualified or non-qualified.
Right.
I'm sorry, qualified IRAs or Roth IRAs.
Right. They still have to take the money, but with Roths, they're not taxed,
exactly.
Which is nice, but the money still has to come out.
And just as I mentioned, just a clarification, if anybody was thinking this out there, is that what Aaron was referring to is that there is no income taxation on transfers between spouses at death.
Right.
We think of that as a tax-free, or we call it tax-free, but it's a transfer. The spouse that's receiving those previously non-taxed assets do have to pay taxes when they pull the money out.
Right, when they pull the money out, but as in receiving the IRA, they don't have to start pulling immediately, which is nice.
Yeah, and they can assume they can assume the IRA of the other person, which is kind of cool.
Exactly.
And you talked about the beneficiary IRA options, and as we know that when someone hits 70.5, usually the percentage starts at 3.87, and it
gradually increases.
Ratchets up every year. And so what happens is our clients are complaining.
Ugh, difficult.
We love them, and we listen to them, but it's like, why is my distribution increasing? Well, hopefully it's increasing for two reasons. Number one is you're getting older and you're
still alive.
And what's the second one?
And the way that the RMD is calculated is, one, using your age, but two, they have to have an account value. So the account value is December 31st of the previous year, is how they determine what your next year's distribution is. So if we've done our jobs and we're prudently growing and protecting your assets, then your account values are going up, meaning you have a larger number to take a larger percentage of, because every year your percentage increases.
Mm-hmm.
So that means more fun time.
More fun time. More dough. More fun. More money to be able to.
But so if you think about it, at 70, the first RMD percentage is around 3.8%.
But for someone in their teens,
it could be as low as 1.5%, maybe less, depending upon how young they are.
So imagine that. They get to restart the clock. So let's use a simple example. Let's assume that let's look at our friends Joe and Sally. They have 1.2 million of IRA assets. We know that based on a 4% withdrawal, they've got to take out this year $48,000.
But 1% would be
1.5%. Well, 1.5% would end up being $18,000, and that would be based assuming that their grandchildren were
the beneficiary. And that's very cool, because we use 4% as a prudent withdrawal rate when we're working with individuals in retirement. But if you imagine only pulling 1.5%, and having those assets invested, hopefully they'll be earning more than that 1.5%, meaning that the assets you pass on to the grandchildren, whenever you pass them on, do have the potential to be with them forever.
Well, forever,
until their retirement.
Exactly. So in theory, they could have an asset that is growing,
that they're actually being able to use income from. So what does $18,000 do?
Getting a little check from grandma and grandpa, if you think about it, every year when they're gone, but also growing over even, let's say, maybe a 40 to 50 year period.
Imagine what $200,000 could do over 40 years.
Right.
That could potentially be the key to securing your grandchildren's retirement.
Exactly. So when we talk about intergenerational wealth transfer, this is probably one of the most effective ways to do it, because otherwise what happens is the parents have to take the money out at
their income RMD, which is their older.
Which could be double, which could be 3% instead of necessarily 4%, because they're not that old.
But then they have to throw that income on top of
their other
assets.
And if they're smart, what like we would be talking about is like, if you're getting, as an example in this case, they have 2 children. So let's say that the kids actually had to pull $24,000 out each. They'd already inherited it, right? $24,000 each of the $48,000. Well, if they were smart, they were with us. We'd say, well, are you putting as much as you can into your 401ks?
But if you just
or your
exactly,
right?
but if you pass those IRA assets onto the grandchildren, they're already in the lowest tax bracket that they could be, because most likely, either one, they may not be working yet, or two, they're probably in their early working years versus their highest income earning years later in their careers. So most likely they'll be able to keep more of the money without having to pass it on to Uncle Sam the same way that their parents would.
And you're right. In many cases, you think about it, like in the Joe and Sally's case, we mentioned that they had about $600,000 of other assets.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't include their house.
Right. So and
the kids are going to get the house free anyways and sell it and do all that kind of good stuff.
And the cool thing about assets outside of retirement plans is the kids will get a step up in basis with those assets without having to pay any taxes until they start selling the securities that make up those assets. Yeah.
And at the end of the day here, what we're talking about is really being able to take the wishes that you have for your family, but really be able to really make a big impact intergenerationally. Now, this isn't to say that Joe and Sally necessarily would give all of their IRA assets to the 4 grandchildren. Maybe they give a third. Maybe they give half.
Maybe they pick a dollar amount and say each grandkid gets $25,000 or $100,000, whatever it is.
The rest of it go to the grandkids, exactly. So, or the rest of it go to the parents. But again, engineering in advance is a cool thing to do. You can really create. That's what smart people do. We know that you're not going to be on the planet forever, but at the same time, if you can really directly impact the lives of the people you love and maybe help them secure their financial security, that's great. You know what's nice? You're not buying anything. I mean,
there's nothing to buy. These are document changes.
Exactly. We're really talking about sitting down and doing planning, and I hope you can tell, but.
This is the fun stuff.
This is the fun stuff. I mean, this is really the fun stuff, which is really helping people get to where they want to go. I mean, that's really, we think, what a coaching relationship's about.
Also, I think it's very cool to be able to sit down with someone, and this is true in really any field. If you can sit down with someone and say, this is what I want to happen, and then a professional can come back and say, how do we make this happen? But not only how do we make this happen, how do we make this happen in the best possible way, the most tax-efficient way in this particular case?
And again, what's important here is that if you're having these thoughts, whether you're working with us or not, if you're working with another advisor, great. Go talk to them.
Please ask the question because it's important.
Yeah, find out what can I do so that, frankly, when you go to see your lawyer, who hopefully is an expert scriber, as I like to call him, okay, you'll really have a better understanding of what you want to go, and frankly, then they can do a better work in making sure that your documents reflect that. And that's an important thing to do. Whether it's a living will or TOD, I mean, whatever it would be, it's always good to do that.
Exactly.
Great. So again, you don't have to be vanilla.
No, let's think about what you want to happen, and then talk to a professional and see if those are things that you can make happen, and most of the time they are.
And again, I think why this is so important today is, we're really seeing the very beginning of the movement from pension plans to 401ks, IRAs, etc. In the old days, in the previous generation, what happened was a lot of folks didn't accumulate a lot of money because the companies were taking care of things, and so there wasn't really this money being transferred between generations. Now that we're moving the entire frankly, for most people, most of the responsibility, primary, is being shifted from the companies to the people through these
401ks, 403bs, 457.
You're really looking at wealth transfer being available to go between generations and not stopping when you stop.
And also,
what happens with
this is really, I think, two pieces have come together to create what is now the largest wealth transfer in history, because one, the baby boomer generation is one of the largest generations in history, but two, just like you said, they were on the cusp of moving from defined benefit to defined contribution plans, and that's really where this huge shift occurred. So now you have the opportunity to do things that your parents didn't have the opportunity to do because you had to accumulate these assets, and hopefully you don't outlive them, so now you can pass them on.
Yeah. Exactly. So hopefully you felt like that was a good discussion. Open your mind to some planning opportunities that are out there. I think that's a good idea. Aaron, should we take our first break?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach.
I'm Erin Lapidus, the health insurance coach.
Don't you dare touch that dial. We'll be right back right after these messages.
Now, back to Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here's Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
That's right. We're back here on the Big 550 KTRS. Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach.
I'm Erin Lapidus, the health insurance coach.
We're willing, we're waiting. We're wanting to take your questions. 969-KTRS, star KTRS from your cell phones, or 1-888-550-KTRS. You know, it's fun because usually, Erin, after we do shows where we talk a little bit about wealth transfer, we get lots of calls, folks coming in to visit with us on coaching sessions, because taxes are important and they're easy, but actually being able to take your life's work, which is really what you've accumulated over time, and pass that on to the people that you love. Know that it's going to happen in a meaningful way, knowing that we're actually minimizing. You think about, these are really a second level of taxation because you pay taxes on stuff during your lifetime. It's kind of important to do. So, love to do that. Well, great. I was thinking what we might do at this point, because we're overdue. We're about, we've got about 10 to 15 minutes left. Let's go to our Smart Choices About Our Healthcare segment, sponsored by our very good friends,
Coventry Healthcare of Missouri.
And Aetna. We're glad we met you, company.
That's right. So, this is an interesting one. I received a phone call this week from Fred. He's been on Medicare for 2 years due to disability. But he's turning 65 next month and wanted to know if he can have a do-over. Does he get another?
Yes, that's an interesting.
Does he get another election? Because technically, this is his initial election into Medicare.
You like to know about these fun facts, don't you?
I do like to.
This is kind of cool. It's
about the quirks of the system. That's what I call it, the quirks of the system.
You mean the opportunities?
That's right, the opportunities.
Intended or unintended.
And the very fun opportunity for Fred is that, yes.
Fun with Fred.
You do get a do-over. If you're on Medicare due to Social Security disability, you get a chance to re-choose your supplemental policy to Medicare at 65.
So, in other words, you can either, if you had a Medicare Advantage plan and you said, I don't like this anymore, you can go back without evidence of insurability.
Exactly. You could take a supplement.
That's big for somebody that's disabled.
That's very true. You could take a supplement, or if you said, I don't like this Medicare Advantage plan that I'm currently on, I want a different one, you can do that too.
Well, they could do that during open enrollment anyways.
Well, they could do that during open enrollment, but Fred turns 65 next month,
so
July,
this is off
he could do it. Exactly, so it's off anniversary.
He gets 2.
He gets 2 this year.
If he changed that and he didn't like that for the next 3 months, then he could go and change it.
Exactly.
You knew that.
I did.
I know you did.
Well, it was great. So right now, Fred currently has United Healthcare Medicare Complete, which is their Medicare Advantage plan.
There you go.
Which,
by the way, you helped him.
That is correct. Back 2 long years ago.
You don't have to call him direct. And I mean, what nice is enough. I do remember Fred because he was a very nice man when we visited with him. And when you visited with him, I met him when he was in the waiting room. I warmed one up for you.
I appreciate.
And I thought what was interesting was that one of the questions he had said to me was he looked at a lot of information, etc. And after your analysis, you decided to go to United Healthcare. And as he was leaving, he was saying to me, it was really cool because I was thinking about purchasing something else or whatever, and it was great that Aaron let out the options, but he could have called directly to ARP.
That's right, United Healthcare AARP. That's right.
But the rates were no different.
No different on the rate.
And said what was neat is that when he got to when he is now, when he's getting into these situations where he really needs advice,
he's got someone to turn to.
You're already getting paid.
That's right. I get paid every month that my clients are enrolled.
And he doesn't pay anymore because he's paying $0 now.
That's exactly right.
And he also didn't have to join ARP.
He did not have to join ARP to be on their Medicare Advantage plan. To be on their supplement is another question.
There you go.
So he wanted to hear about what the choices were for the since he could take the supplement, why not? So currently, he's not paying any premium on top of his Medicare Part B. He's paying the $134 a month. He uses co-pays and has to work within a network. Currently, all of his physicians fit inside that network, and his maximum out of pocket is $2,900.
Now, just for information, was he actually using that much during the year, do you think?
So that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask him when we sat down to discuss the switchover.
Okay.
So if he were to make a change, the supplement options, and so here's the other piece of this, which is when you're under 65 years old, you're on Medicare because of disability, the supplement prices are significantly higher when you're, I know it doesn't seem to make sense, but the insurance company knows you're on disability, so you might be paying more. So you will be paying the insurance company more because you might be using more services.
Rip off.
Exactly. So if you're pre-65 and on Medicare, the rates are higher. So when he got to 65, the rate actually drops.
And that really is kind of a rip-off because, Aaron, as you've educated me on, Medicare's picking up 80% of the charges.
Exactly.
So the insurance company's not picking up, generally, unless you really have something bad going on, they're not picking up anything.
Right, they're picking up the last 20, and also, which isn't much. So for Fred, his supplement would be $147 a month.
Okay.
But because of the prescriptions he was on, he needed a prescription drug plan that cost $83 a month. So it's pretty expensive. So that's $230 a month.
Well, the average one is usually, around 25?
25 or so.
So that's really expensive.
Exactly. So and the interesting thing about prescription drug plans is the premium is based on a few things. It's based on formulary. It's based on access, so how large you want the network of pharmacies that you can garner, and then also it's based slightly on benefits. Did they cut the deductible out or not? What are the co-pays? But as we've talked on the show before, all prescription drug plans have to follow a certain structure that Medicare sets out. So with these two components, it'd be $230 a month for Fred to have a supplement versus what he currently uses, the Medicare Advantage plan, which is $2,700 a year.
So that's upfront cost.
Exactly. He's going to pay that regardless of what he does, regardless of how often he uses the physician. He's going to be paying that $2,700.
And that doesn't include his drug costs.
Exactly.
In terms of co-pays.
Co-pays.
Right.
Exactly. So, just like you asked, is he really hitting this maximum out of pocket? My first question to Fred after we went through the analysis of, okay, we're at $2,700. Well, how much are you hitting your maximum out of pocket every year? How much are you actually consuming is the question.
Right.
Because what's the motivation behind wanting to switch? You can do it, but why? So that's the number one question. And it turned out that he was consuming a fair amount of services. He was spending about $2,000 a year.
Okay.
So
was it? Well, I was going to say, but that's still cheaper than $2,750.
Exactly, it is, and that really goes to show that even individuals that are consuming services still not getting to your maximum out of pocket. So when we compared the $2,000 we knew he was spending for the last 2 years versus the $2,700, which one we knew, okay, it's more already, but that's a premium, so we know it's going up every year. It's not going to stay $2,700 forever. So eventually what will happen is the $2,700 in premium will become more on an annual basis than the $2,900 out-of-pocket maximum. So even though Fred's not saving the full $2,000, he's still saving $900 a year because he's not hitting the max, or he's saving $760 a year because that's the difference between the premium for the supplement and what he's spending. So let's pocket that.
That makes sense to me.
Right. And so although he had the opportunity to switch, Fred decided that he wasn't going to because even though he felt like walking into the office, I'm spending a lot every year, he's still spending less than what he would be spending, and he's not consuming any difference in service. Getting the same services from the same people he would get, regardless of what supplement he was on, but he's just going to save a little because he's only paying when he uses the service versus giving the insurance company the money up front.
It's interesting. So let's play with this a little bit, Aaron. So what happens is he's right now he's on a Medicare Advantage plan.
Yes.
But let's assume that the situation was opposite. You found out that he was actually spending more.
Yes.
And a lot of times maybe it's because of the drug formulary, as an example, which I know you have to factor in to figure out the total out of pocket. So what you could do is you could take him to a traditional supplement plan. He could get in to pay his premium. Obviously, in January, he would have open enrollment would be available where he could jump off and go back into an Advantage plan if he felt like he really had made a mistake.
Yes.
Or alternatively, he could really do it at any open enrollment, right?
Well, he doesn't even. The cooler part about this is he doesn't even need an open enrollment period to do that.
to jump off and go onto a. So you can jump off a SUP and go into a Medicare.
Well, you could jump. Well, if you started out on the SUP, you would have to wait for open enrollment to get back into the Medicare Advantage plan. But for individuals who are on Medicare Advantage for the first time, they get a free look for the first year.
I was going there as a second. So he has
a lot of ability to make change. And that is something that I like to talk about with, especially people that are first-time visitors to the office.
Right.
Everyone's a little nervous because this is something new. Most of the time, either you had very limited options because you had individual health insurance, or you had no options because the employer said, pick these three. You have either this is our choice for the year, this is what you have, or you have these three options, pick from one of them. Now you have all the options, you have all the choices to make, and it doesn't look anything like what you've ever seen before, so everyone's a little apprehensive. Also, generally you talk with your friends, and a lot of people have a lot of things to say, and so you have a lot of information when you walk into the office for the first time. And what I like to say is, nothing we decide here today is going to be a permanent decision. We can make changes based on your needs at almost any time, depending upon what we need to do. So I think that takes a little pressure off of people knowing that this isn't the last health insurance policy they're ever going to have.
Right.
So
lots of do-overs, and again, I think what's important here is that, A, you can save time by having an expert help you, which is kind of cool, and then B, good to be able to go somewhere that you can trust to get some questions when things do happen.
That's right, so you can always call our offices.
How do you do that? Pick up the phone. Pick up
the phone, and then you dial 314-863-0008.
Or you can send us an email, specifically the more fun email, Aaron@jblfinancial.com.
Or the email that I'll eventually receive, Jeff@jblfinancial.com.
Or go to our website, right?
jblfinancial.com.
Hit the Contact Us section.
That's right. And we'll happily answer within 24 hours.
It looks like we're getting down to the close of the show.
Down to the wire.
Which is kind of fun. So we always do have fun with you every single Saturday morning here on the Big 550 KTRS. And as we mentioned a couple times, if you are between the ages of 55 and 75, you're within 5 years of retirement, you're getting ready to retire, you're saying, you know what, it's time for a checkup, it's time to come for us maybe to come in and visit with the coaches, whether it's for health care or for really total retirement planning. It's easy to do. Pick up the phone. Give us a call. 314-863-0008. Again, 314-863-0008. Or send us an email. Jeff@jblfinancial.com.
Or Aaron@jblfinancial.com.
See you next week.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the Retirement Coach. We'll be back next week at 10 a.m. here on the Big 550 KTRS.